To the casual observer, my existence in the tranquil suburbs appeared as a flawless tableau, unmarred by the complexities of reality. A grand abode with an expansive garden. A shimmering pool that glistened beneath the radiant sun. A diligent spouse. And a son of 2 decades poised to don his cap and gown in celebration of scholarly triumph. Yet, beyond those shuttered portals, all was not as idyllic as it appeared. Mine own spouse, Mike, doth devote the greater part of his hours to his toil, and when he doth return to our abode, he is often snared by the glow of his device or the flickering screen. The affection that once enveloped us hath withered, leaving me a spectre in mine own union. On a fair Saturday afternoon in the bloom of summer, my gaze first fell upon Marcus. He was the dearest companion of my son Eric, a courteous and assured youth who had graced our abode with his presence for many a month. In times past, I bestowed little regard upon him. Yet on that fateful day, a transformation did occur. Eric did extend an invitation to Marcus, beckoning him to partake in the pleasures of our backyard pool, where the waters shimmered invitingly under the sun's warm embrace. From the hearth, I beheld a fleeting vision of them through the transparent portal of glass. Marcus did stand upon the brink of the shimmering pool, his form bedecked in droplets, glistening beneath the fervent gaze of the midday sun. His form was lithe and strong, his complexion deep and unblemished, a testament to nature's artistry. With a graceful plunge, he descended into the depths, emerging anew with a smile that revealed a gleaming array of pristine teeth. Forsooth, in that fleeting instant, mine eyes were held captive, unable to divert their gaze. It was not solely his visage that ensnared my gaze. It was his assurance, the manner in which he bore himself, so unlike my husband's aloof and weary countenance. A peculiar tumult arose within my breast, a sensation long dormant, now awakened after many a year. I cast aside the sentiment and redirected my attention to the task at hand. Yet my thoughts continued to stray towards him. In the weeks that followed, Marcus found himself increasingly drawn to our abode. He and Eric didst toil in our humble garage, engaged in merry contests of skill upon the screen until the moon did rise high. And at times, they didst recline by the shimmering waters of the pool. Whenever Marcus graced the vicinity, I became acutely conscious of his being. On a fair afternoon, as Eric did hasten to the market, Marcus did enter for a refreshing draught. In the chamber of culinary creation, I found myself engaged in the noble task of preparing the evening repast. "Good Madam Blake, might I beseech thee for a moment to quench my thirst with a draught of water?" Marcus inquired, his resonant voice catching me unawares. "Verily, Marcus," I did respond, striving to maintain a demeanor most untroubled. "Pray, do call me Amanda." Once more, he didst reveal that enchanting grin. "Gratitude be unto thee, Amanda," as he didst extend his hand for a chalice. Our fingers didst chance upon one another in a fleeting moment. It was but a brief and transient instant, yet it coursed through my being with a sudden fervor. I swiftly withdrew my hand, fervently wishing he had not perceived the manner in which my breath caught in my throat. "Apologies for the mishap," he remarked with a light-hearted laugh. "'Tis well," I whispered, my cheeks aglow with a rosy hue. Once he departed from the kitchen, I found myself leaning against the counter, striving to quell the tempest of thoughts that surged within my mind. What dost thou suppose was befalling me, though I had traversed the years of matrimony and reached the wisdom of my 40s? I found myself in a most curious state, my cheeks aflame as if I were a youthful maiden, smitten by the charms of one so much my junior. As the night drew near, I found myself by the tranquil waters, alone, after all had retired to their slumber. The liquid glimmered beneath the silvery glow of the moon, its soft undulations reflecting the turmoil that stirred within my breast. It was a truth I could no longer refute. There existed a certain allure in Marcus, an ineffable quality that ensnared my heart and eluded my grasp. I did assure myself it was but a fleeting fancy, a mere whim that would wither away as the sands of time slipped through the hourglass. Yet, within the recesses of my mind, I was aware of a truth that lay beyond mere appearances. The manner in which he gazed upon me that fateful day. It was not merely a figment of my imagination. There existed a silent understanding betwixt us, a flame that could not be overlooked. As the hours of darkness deepened, I made a vow to cast these emotions into the shadows. As a devoted spouse and nurturing matron, I bore the weight of kinship upon my shoulders. Yet amidst the solemn vow I crafted within, a tempest of curiosity stirred. What if fate were to weave a different tale? Attend closely, for within a fleeting lapse of strength lies the power to unravel the very fabric of existence. Pray, do not neglect to bestow thy favor and join our circle for more enthralling tales that plunge into the profoundest depths of the human soul. Though I endeavored to cast aside the tempest of my emotions, to entomb them beneath the monotony of my daily existence, the presence of Marcus rendered such efforts futile. His presence didst fill every nook of mine abode, his mirth resounding through the chambers, his fragrance lingering in the atmosphere long after he had departed from a space. Lo, a week had passed since that fateful eve by the shimmering waters, when fortune's wheel did turn most unexpectedly. In the sweltering embrace of summer's heat, Eric and Marcus engaged in a spirited contest upon our driveway, their garments cast aside as they pursued the fleeting orb of leather. I did unbar the window of the parlor, allowing the gentle breeze to enter, whilst their merry jests wafted within. In my endeavor to attend to the task of folding garments, mine eyes did wander incessantly towards Marcus, as if drawn by an unseen force. Upon the conclusion of their spirited game, Eric hastened indoors to procure an item from his chamber, whilst Marcus remained upon the porch, a vessel of water in hand. He espied me gazing through the casement and bestowed upon me a smile. It was not merely a smile of camaraderie, it bore the weight of understanding. As if he could pierce the veil of my very soul, mine heart did race, and I did swiftly avert mine gaze, feigning occupation with the linens that lay before me. What a splendid day it is! Wouldst thou not agree? Lo, the sound of Marcus's voice did take me by surprise. He stood just beyond the window's threshold, leaning with an air of nonchalance against the frame. Indeed, it is, I responded, striving to maintain a steady tone. Pray, Mrs. Blake, thou ought to venture forth into the light of day with greater frequency. Seek the warmth of the sun, he did proclaim, his voice airy yet tinged with an elusive sentiment that danced just beyond my grasp. I find myself content in this very spot, yet I express my gratitude, mustering a smile before I take my leave. Yet his utterances did remain, echoing through the corridors of thought. It was not merely a suggestion, but rather the manner in which he uttered it, as though he dared me to respond. As the evening waned, I discovered myself solitary in the kitchen, tidying up the remnants of the repast. Marcus didst enter, his footsteps gentle upon the tile, tones soft and melodious. Nay, I possess it, I did respond, averting mine eyes from his. Yet he did not depart. Instead, he did repose against the counter, his gaze fixed upon me. Thou dost labor most diligently. Dost thou not perceive it? I didst halt, the dish in mine grasp forsaken. Forsooth, none hath uttered such words unto me in many a year. It is but my humble endeavor, I replied with a modest shrug. Perchance it is time that thou art cared for, he did declare, his gaze entwining with mine. Mine breath didst seize upon me. Lo, once more, that flicker, that silent strain betwixt us lingered in the air, though reason beckoned me to depart, to utter words that might sever this bond. I found myself unable to do so. In that moment, I found myself ensnared, held captive by his stare, much like a delicate moth drawn irresistibly to the flickering light of a flame. Ere I could utter a word, Eric did enter the chamber, shattering the stillness of the moment. Marcus did straighten, a gentle smile gracing his countenance once more. Gratitude for the repast, dear Mrs. Blake, he did express ere he departed with Eric. Yet his utterances lingered in the atmosphere, weightier than I wished to acknowledge. The ensuing days unfolded in a haze of surreptitious gazes and ephemeral caresses. In the confines of the kitchen, our hands did chance to meet once more, and this time, neither of us did hastily withdraw. In another moment, as I traversed the corridor, his arm brushed against mine, igniting a tremor that coursed through my very being. Alas, I was well aware of the peril that lay before me. As I tread upon a delicate path, a single misstep might unravel all that I hold dear. Yet, the harder I endeavored to withstand, the deeper I became ensnared by his allure. On a certain afternoon, whilst Eric ventured forth to attend to his various tasks, Marcus chose to remain in the abode. As I reclined upon the patio, partaking of chilled tea, he didst make his entrance beside me. "Pray, may I take a seat?" he inquired. "Nay," I answered, striving to maintain an air of nonchalance. For a time, we lingered in quietude. The sole melodies that grace the air are the sweet notes of birds in song and the faint murmur of distant carriages upon the road. Then he didst turn his gaze upon me. "Thou dost appear altered in recent days. Is all in good order?" In a moment of uncertainty, I found myself at a loss for words, pondering how best to reply. "Mine thoughts doth swirl like tempestuous winds," I did declare at last. "Should there be aught I might undertake?" His voice did fade into the ether, yet the meaning lingered unmistakably in the air. I gazed upon him, truly gazed upon him, and in that fleeting instant, I sensed a transformation take place. It transcended mere attraction henceforth. It was a fervent yearning and a deep necessity to once more embrace the essence of life. Oftentimes, a single choice may alter the course of fate entirely. Shall Amanda yield to the yearnings of her heart? Or shall she retreat from the precipice? Pray, lend thine ear and partake in this enthralling narrative of fervor and treachery. The hour of my surrender was destined to arrive. Despite my futile attempts to persuade my own heart to resist for many a fortnight. On a sultry Friday eve, Mike and Eric ventured forth to witness the grand spectacle of a baseball contest within the bustling city. The abode lay in an uncommon stillness, a stillness that permits one's musings to meander into perilous realms. Marcus did linger in the shadows that eve, proclaiming his disinterest in the sport of baseball. I did not dare to question it. A fragment of my heart did find solace in his decision to remain. A portion of my soul was gripped by dread. Upon the couch I did repose, a tome in hand, yet mine eyes could not linger upon a solitary page. Marcus didst appear in the threshold, his lofty form cast in shadow, against the faint glow of the corridor's illumination. "Pray, may I accompany thee?" he inquired, lifting a chalice of clear liquid aloft. "Verily," I did proclaim, mine utterance scarcely rising above a breath. He took his seat beside me, drawing nearer than ever he had in times past. The atmosphere that enveloped us was fraught with a palpable energy, laden with the unspoken tension we had been gracefully navigating for many a fortnight. "Thou dost appear anxious," quoth he after a brief pause, his tone gentle. "All is well." I did deceive, yet my hands did quiver ever so slightly as I turned the leaf of my tome. He extended his hand and with a tender grace, relieved me of the tome, setting it upon the coffee table with care. "Amanda, thou needest not don a mask in mine presence. To hear mine name uttered in such a manner, stripped of all decorum and artifice, did send a tremor through my very being." I didst turn to confront him, mine own resolve faltering beneath the burden of his piercing gaze. Alas, I endeavored to speak, yet the very utterance faltered upon my lips. "Thou canst," quoth he, his voice firm and resolute. "Verily, thou dost sense it as well." And in that instant, my thoughts did cease to wander. I ceased my lamentations over what is just or unjust, nor did I fret over the repercussions that might descend upon me with great force. I did lean forth, and he did meet me in the midst of our approach. When our lips did meet, it was as though the very floodgates of passion were unleashed. Weeks of repressed longing surged forth, enveloping us entirely. His hands, robust yet tender, cradled my visage, drawing me nearer with an irresistible allure. I did dissolve into his essence, casting aside all thoughts save for the manner in which he stirred my very soul. The hours that ensued were a tempest of fervor and remorse. We didst shift from the couch to the chamber, where I had oft passed many a solitary night, pondering if mine husband even took note of my presence any longer. Yet, as the hours of darkness did unfold, the harsh light of truth began to encroach upon the revelry. Upon the couch did I recline, with Marcus at my side, gazing upward at the expanse above, whilst my thoughts did whirl in tempestuous fashion. What deed hath I committed? Less than text. This occurrence must not befall us once more. I uttered softly, yet the truth of my utterance eluded me even as it passed my lips. I do not believe thou truly meanest that, quoth Marcus, his voice steady and assured. I didst turn to confront him, seeking some glimmer of uncertainty or faltering in his countenance. There existed not a single one. He extended his hand, gently sweeping a lock of hair from my visage. Thou art worthy of such sentiments. Amanda, let not the words of others sway thy conviction. His utterances struck like a thunderclap upon my bruised spirit, yet they could not dispel the remorse that had firmly entwined itself within. In the weeks that followed, our clandestine romance flourished in the shadows. We did pilfer fleeting instances whenever fortune allowed. When Eric was absent, and Mike toiled into the night, the exhilaration of clandestine movements only served to amplify the fervor. Yet it also cast a shadow of unease upon my mind. On a fair afternoon, as we lingered upon the patio's gentle embrace, Marcus did extend his hand towards mine. I didst withdraw with haste, casting a wary glance toward the abode. Take thy ease, he declared with a knowing grin. Alas, the abode stands empty. That is not the crux of the matter, I murmured, my gaze flitting to the panes of glass. Yet, it was not solely the dread of discovery that did torment my soul. In every moment we shared, I sensed myself drifting ever more from the essence of who I once was. Upon a fateful eve, the veil of our clandestine affair was pierced, as Mike chanced upon Marcus's garment, a hoodie, carelessly cast upon the back of a dining chair. Did Marcus abandon us in this place? He inquired with a nonchalant air. I spoke with haste, mine heart a thump with fervor. Verily, he hath likely let it slip from his mind post-repast. Mike did lift an eyebrow, yet he chose not to inquire further. Yet, the meeting did leave my spirit in disarray. How many moons did pass ere he began to inquire further? The response arrived with swiftness beyond my anticipation. On a balmy Sunday afternoon, the abode resonated with the familiar clamor of life. In yonder backyard, Eric and Marcus did engage in merry laughter, whilst Mike, in the chamber of leisure, flitted through the channels with naught but distraction. As for me, I donned a mask of feigned tranquility, diligently arranging the table for our evening repast. Yet all was not well. I had traversed a boundary that could not be undone, and the burden of my concealed truth was starting to bear down upon me. Each time mine eyes beheld Mike, a pang of guilt did twist within my belly, sharp as a dagger's edge. Each occasion I beheld Eric, a heavy weight of despair did settle upon my heart, as if I were the most wretched of mothers in all the realm. Marcus didst catch mine eye through the kitchen window, bestowing upon me a small, knowing smile. Mine heart did flutter, and I averted mine gaze with haste. This must come to a close. I was compelled to halt ere all did descend into ruin. Yet destiny wove a different tapestry. On that fateful eve, it came to pass, Mike had ventured forth to engage in a discourse upon the device of communication, whilst Eric, in the upper chambers, was cleansing himself after their aquatic endeavors. In the solitude of the kitchen, Marcus and I found ourselves ensnared in a palpable tension, as if the very air around us had taken on a weight that could be cleaved asunder. Less than text. I can no longer endure this plight, I murmured, my voice quaking with emotion. He did approach with measured grace, his hand lightly grazing against my own. Thou dost not speak in earnest. Indeed, I do, I proclaimed, albeit my determination faltered beneath his gaze. This be amiss, Marcus. It must needs come to an end. Ere he could utter a word, the rear portal did swing wide, and in strode Mike. Forsooth, in a fleeting instant, I believed we had gathered our wits. Yet then his gaze did sharpen, darting betwixt Marcus and myself. What dost thou perceive in this moment? He inquired, his voice laced with a biting edge. Naught, I exclaimed with haste, my tone soaring to a pitch that lacked persuasion. Mike's eyes did tarry upon me for a moment, ere they turned to rest upon Marcus. Whether thou art a friend of Eric or not, thou must needs elucidate thyself. Young one. Marcus lingered in uncertainty, yet ere he could utter a word, Eric emerged at the threshold, his locks still glistening with the remnants of the cleansing waters. What dost thou inquire about? He inquired, casting his gaze betwixt us. The stillness lingered, thick and burdensome. Then, to my dismay, Mike didst turn his gaze upon Eric. How deeply dost thou truly know thy companion? My son? Father, what discourse dost thou engage in? Eric inquired, his brow furrowed in discontent. Mike remained silent, his lips sealed as if by some unseen hand. Instead, he gazed upon me, his eyes brimming with a tempest of doubt and treachery. Pray, Amanda, dost thou have a matter of import to share with me? Mine lips did part, yet naught did escape their confines. The verity did strive to emerge from the depths. Yet I found myself unable to utter its name. It was Marcus who at last did shatter the stillness. Good Sir Blake, I do believe there hath been a misapprehension. Speak not falsehoods unto me. Mike bellowed, striking his hand upon the counter with great force. The chamber was beset by tumult and uproar. Eric didst demand answers. As Marcus endeavored to elucidate, the tempest of Mike's wrath was unleashed upon me. When the tumult had ceased, the verity was laid bare. Eric didst burst forth from the dwelling, his visage a canvas of incredulity and wrath. Marcus departed soon thereafter, his customary bravado supplanted by an expression of deep chagrin. In the kitchen, Mike and I found ourselves ensnared in a profound silence, the air thick with unspoken words. How long? He inquired at last, his voice echoing with emptiness. Mine gaze did not dare to meet his own. A fortnight passed, I confessed, my utterance scarcely rising above a murmur. He didst laugh with a bitter mirth, his hand running through his tresses in despair. A fortnight hence, in the company of our son's dearest companion. Oh, Amanda, what folly hath possessed thy mind? Less than text, I was not, I declared, with tears cascading down my visage. In solitude, I found myself. Dear Mike, thou hast been so far removed. And I, do not lay this burden upon my shoulders. He retorted with fervor. The decision thou hast made. Not I. He didst storm forth, abandoning me to my solitude, burdened by guilt and regret most profound. The consequences unfolded like a tragic tale. Steeped in despair, Eric didst turn away his tongue from mine, whilst Mike took his leave to the chamber of guests. The dwelling resembled a battleground, fraught with turmoil and strife. Each encounter fraught with ire and sorrow. Marcus ceased his visits, and I found no fault in his choice. The bond he once shared with Eric lay in ruins, and the prospect of mending my kin appeared as distant as the stars. In the quiet hours, I endeavored to mend the fragments of my existence. Yet alas, the harm was already wrought. When trust is shattered, the path to its restoration becomes a treacherous and arduous journey. Months have passed, yet I remain ensnared by the repercussions of my deeds. Mike and I find ourselves in the realm of counsel, yet the fate of our union hangs in the balance. Shrouded in uncertainty, Eric hath begun to extend his forgiveness towards me, yet our bond shall ne'er return to its former state. As for Marcus, he hath moved on. In a fleeting moment at a humble coffee shop, our eyes met in a brief, clumsy exchange, ere he turned and departed into the ether. A weighty lesson hath been imparted unto me. A fleeting lapse in strength may shatter the bonds of faith forged through the years. Life doth abound with choices, and some may alter the very course of existence in but a fleeting moment. If thou dost desire tales more stirring and full of emotion, prithee, do like and subscribe. Another narrative ever lingers, yearning for its moment to unfold.